Welcome to the second video in the series of how to use Unity in the basic way. In the first video, we learned how to create a Unity project and what these windows on these sides are. If you haven't watched that video, I recommend that you go and do that before watching this one. And in this video, we are going to learn how to create game objects in your scene and how to add scripts to them. So first off, we have this sample scene right here. We know it's named sample scene, and we can find it inside of our scenes folder, inside of our assets folder. This sample scene is our sample scene right here. But all it has in it is this main camera. What I can do, I'm going to dock my hierarchy over here so that I can see this main camera. And then inside the inspector, when you highlight something like this, you can see everything about that game object. Inside this main camera, there's a transform, a camera, and an audio listener. The camera and audio listener are specific to the camera only, and the camera is always in your game, is always in your scene, so you can be able to see things inside of your game view. So you're able to change this position. The position on the X is where the camera is. You can see right here on my scene view that the camera is moving on the X axis. If I put it back to 0, I can move it on the Y axis. And then on the Z axis, it's -10. You can see if I change this, it doesn't do anything. But we have to remember to keep this to -10 because the camera is rendering. It has to be behind all of your other game objects, or else your game objects will not render. I will explain what that means in a minute. In this camera, this is just all the things. You can change the size to change the size of your camera, but I'm going to keep it at 5 just for this. And you can change all of these just to make your camera different for your game. The audio listener is just another thing specific to your camera that doesn't really do anything that you need to worry about. In order to create a game object, I'm going to have to right click on the hierarchy. Since I'm in a 2D game, I'm going to click 2D objects. Just for right now, I'm going to go to sprites and then click square. And then it's going to add a square to my game to my game. It's going to be named square as in the beginning, but you can change it by going up here and changing it to I can name this player if I want to make this square a player. This little check mark right here is if this game object is on or not. If it's off, you can see that it's not there anymore and it's grayed out inside of the hierarchy. But if I turn it back on, then it just goes back to here. Inside of here, this game object has a transform and a sprite renderer. The sprite renderer is what renders it. You can see on the sprite it has a square. You can change the color by going in here. See, I can make it red, white, black. I can make it yellow if I'd like, but I'm going to keep it for white right now. And you can change this position on the X. You can move it. And then what you can see is that the camera bounds are these this white square around here. If I move this square just outside, you can see on the game, there's just like right there. You can see that right there. And then if I'm just going to right click on this transform and click reset just to put it back into the middle. And you can see on the Z, it is 0. And on the main camera, the Z is -10. You would think, oh no, but then I probably can't see the square. But if I change the main camera, the Z, to 0, you can see that in our game view, there's nothing here. And that is because the camera is rendering nothing because the sprite, or the square, and the camera are on the same Z position. The camera renders everything in front of it, but if they're on the same position, it doesn't render anything. So what we can do is go up to this top right here on the scene, and this 2D button, we can click off, and then now it just makes our game into a 3D view, which is kind of nice in 2D games to be able to see what's rendering where. If you right click, you are able to move around. You can see this, and then you can move around with this little thing at the top right here. But what I'm going to want to do is highlight this main camera, and you can see that this box is where it is, and it's rendering everything in this big box right here. So everything right here, you can see all of it goes down there forever, which is kind of difficult to see now, but the square and the camera are on the same Z axis. So if I change the camera to -10, you can see that the camera starts before and is now rendering that square. If I create a circle this time, for going to 2D objects, sprites, and then a circle, it's going to add a circle on the zero on the z-axis, and if I move it back, it still renders because it's still less than -10, or still more than -10, but we should always keep our game objects on z for 0 if you're in 2D games. That is always something important to remember. And then we can go back into our 2D view by just clicking this 2D again, and that's nice to be able to see. And inside or our player or a square, we have this. We are also allowed to add more components to it. So we can right click, go down here and click add a component, and then you can add whatever you want. There are so many things you can add to your game objects, but some things that we're going to be using in the next few tutorials, or that you'll mostly be using inside of your games, are box colliders and rigid bodies. So what you can do is you can add a component. You can add a box collider 2D, and then this box collider 2D, it's going to be a box because we're in a square. If you have a circle, you'll add a circle collider 2D, and so on and so on. And then you can see that there's lots of different checks here, and that we can do all this thing. But if we zoom in on our square right here, and an easy key for that is F, and then we turn off our sprite renderer so it doesn't render anything, we can see this green little line around it, and then that's the collider. Unity has built-in colliders so that if two objects have a collider, they will collide with each other, making collisions and gravity, those things, very easy. We can turn the sprite renderer back on, and we are unable to see this green little box because it doesn't actually render in the game. But this is very easy to see and is very nice to be able to play with because you don't have to create all a script for collisions. You can click is trigger right here, and that will change this collider to a trigger, which will send out something in code and won't actually collide with anything. Used by effector and used by composite are things that you can change to be able to use by other things that are not usually used for players, and they're mostly used for static objects. And then this auto tiling is something that you can use also with composite colliders, with mostly for tile sets. Offsets, you're able to offset the collider. You can see that this green little box is moving on the x-axis when I go like that. So I can change the collider of an object if I'd like to. It doesn't have to be on the actual object. You can also change the size of it by just making it look nice and big, but we can just keep it to the bounds of this square. And then all of this are just the same things that you can change to just give yourself nice and easy code, things that will make your collisions easier to play with. And we can also add another component to this thing, and we'll name it, or we'll add a rigid body 2D. And this thing is basically a component that will give your character gravity. It will allow it to move, and this is just a physics component that lets your character or player or whatever make so much easier. This body type, we're going to keep it as dynamic, but if it doesn't move, we can change it to static or kinematic. So in here it gives us mass, linear drag, angular drag, and gravity scale. You can change the mass, and that does exactly what you think it would do. It would change the mass of the body of this rigid body. And you can change the gravity of how fast it would fall. You can change this collision detection, and this is just when and how it detects for collisions. If it's discrete, then that means it will check for collisions very discreetly, and you won't be able to really see it, and sometimes it's a bit laggy, so you can click continuous. Sleeping mode, you can just click start awake because start awake is nice, and interpolate, you can just click for interpolate just to make the collisions nice and sharp. And then this is just other things you can change for that, and then this is just our little player right here. So if we click this play button, our player will start falling down because we have our gravity scale on it. But we don't really want that, and this is just a really sample, so you don't really have to do that right now. So we can just remove these components from this object, and you can see that it's just back to being a normal square. We can move it around the screen with the W key, and you can click this to move it around the screen. If you click the Q key, you are able to move your view on the screen. If you click the E key, you are able to you are able to move or rotate the object. If you click the R key, you're able to scale the object. And if you click the T key, you were able to scale the object in an easier way than you were if you were just scaling it on the X or the Y. And then the Y key, that just it just rotates the thing just like the E key does. And those are the hotkeys that you can use to make your game objects nice and easier, so you can move them and place them in the spots as you wish. And now we're going to add a script to our player. So if this was an actual game, and our player right here would need a movement script. If you would like to find a movement script, I would recommend that you go watch our player movement script tutorial, where we teach you how to make a movement script and add it to your player so that your player can move around on a rigid body and a ground in your game. Alright, now I would like to add a simple script to our game object. So inside of the inspector, I'm going to click Add Component, and then you're going to, in the search bar, you're going to type the name of your script. For me, I'm just going to type sample script, and then click New Script. Inside the name, it will just be the thing that you typed inside the search bar, but make sure that you have no spaces inside of your name, or else your script will not be able to attach to your game object. Then you'll click Create and Add, and then it will create a script for you. Once the script has been created, it will be put on inside of your player, and you'll be able to open up in your choice of coding editor. If you'd like to change your choice of coding editor, you can go into the Edit, and then click Preferences, which will bring up this. You can go to External Tools, and then right here at the top, it says External Script Editor. I have Visual Studio 2022, but you can change it to Visual Studio Code if you would like to code in that instead. And then once you want to code inside of your script, you're going to double click on your script, and it will open up inside of your choice of coding editor. Now once we're in our script, it will look something like this. This is the basic of all Unity scripts, so that all Unity scripts will look like this once you open them up for the first time. You'll be able to write stuff in here in C#, and if you don't know C#, the coding language, I would recommend learning it before starting your Unity journey, because it's very helpful to know the coding language when coding inside of Unity. Just for a test right here, we're going to go inside of Update, and we're going to do a debug.log, and then inside of here, we're just going to type check, and this is just a debug.log that is going to just log every frame that our game is running, because update is called once per frame, this method that we put it in. And for those who don't know C# syntax, debug.log, it just sends a message to the console inside of Unity, and then once we're done with that, we can head our way over to Unity, and then inside of Unity, we will be able to see a little snippet of what our code will look like. We have this debug.log, and it's a check, and this script is on our player right here, and then we can just check that it is working by clicking the play button to see our debug.log inside of the console. And once we're in play mode, we can see that down here in the console right here that we have a check, and I have collapse checked right here just because our thing, if it doesn't have, we'll just have so many checks right here. It says we have around 300 of those, because it's being done every frame, which means it'll be done a lot, which just shows that our Unity script is working on side of our player, or our square right here. And this is the end of this tutorial. If you like this tutorial, please give our channel a like and a subscribe, because it really helps out our channel, and stay tuned for the next tutorial if you are liking this series.